continuing to problem 4, once again, we're given the graph of a function, and we want to describe the various features of this graph in terms of increasing or decreasing, and concave up or concave down. Okay, so first of all, if we look at the intervals being described in these parts, right? So there's two different intervals, from -infinity to 0, and then from 0 to infinity. So as usual, these are describing x values, right? So along the x-axis, the left end is -infinity, and the right end is +infinity. So that means that in the interval from -infinity to 0, that's this portion of the graph, right? So let me circle this portion of the graph. So that's referring to parts A and B. Okay, so within this portion of the graph is asking whether the first derivative is positive or negative, and whether the second derivative is positive or negative. So the first derivative tells whether the graph is increasing or decreasing. So that's what we're trying to decide in A, right? So whether it's increasing or decreasing. So as always, we follow the graph from the left to the right. So going in this direction, the graph is curving upwards. So that means that the graph is increasing. Okay, so part B, so now it's looking at the second derivative, and it's looking at whether the second derivative is positive or negative. So now we want to look at the curvature of the graph and whether it's concave up or concave down. So let's again have a reminder that the concave up shape should look like this. I mean, not exactly like this, but to sort of have this curvature, and the concave down shape should have this curvature. Right, so what kind of curvature do we have here? So you can see that it's curving, it's sort of like part of a smiley face, right? So you can see that the curvature is kind of like this, so it's the concave up curvature. Okay, so now let's continue to parts C and D, which is referring to the interval from 0 to infinity. And so now we're looking at this portion of the graph. Okay, so similarly, first derivative tells us whether it's increasing or decreasing, right? So again, following along the graph from the left to the right, you can see that the graph is going upwards, so it's increasing. Right, so it's positive. And for part D, in terms of the second derivative, you can see that this kind of curvature, which sort of has this curvature, right? So it's concave down, which means that the second derivative is negative. Okay, so that's the shape of the graph in problem 4.